Did you at times make forecasts that went totally wrong?
No, not really, because everything's connected. You can make a wrong forecast if you're looking at just a single item, because something else is coming in from the outside that you didn't pay attention to. So in order to see everything develop, you have to realize it's all interconnected in its capital flows. So it's everything has a reason, and it's like a domino. It falls and hits the next one and the next one and it pushes. So if you get the first one right, it's hard to be wrong on everything else. And I mean, you can look on our website. I mean, all right, 2011, I mean, even Barron's covered it. They said, okay, fine. We said stock markets are low, we're going to make new highs. At the same time, gold's peaked out, that's it. In order for that to happen, both have to happen in unison. You can't have the stock market going to new highs and gold keep going. I mean, it's a balance. It's like a play.
We experience a lot of international turmoil and conflict. Are these the results of international financial systems?
It's, yes, I would say you can go online and read Herbert Hoover's memoirs. They're free at his library, 1931. All the history books that we learned in school about the Great Depression are all propaganda. None of them told the truth. They wanted to sell a socialistic agenda and blame corporations, etc. When I read Herbert Hoover's memoirs, my eyes were just completely wide open. He has in there all of the documentation from heads of state back and forth. The first sovereign default began in Austria, and then it spread to Germany. Banks were falling, and eventually all of Europe defaulted on its debts. Britain was forced into a moratorium. They eventually came out of it. They suspended all interest payments, everything. And Herbert Hoover, in his memoirs, is documenting this capital flow rushing around as governments are going into chaos. And it explains exactly what happened with Greece. He said, capital moved like a loose cannon on the deck of a ship in the middle of a hurricane. He says it was firing off in every which direction so fast they couldn't form a committee quick enough to figure out what was happening. Greece, I can tell you, when Greece fell, what did the traders do? They look around, oh, okay, fine, made a bunch of money on that. Who's next? Oh, look at Portugal. Oh, look at Spain. Oh, then they start moving. This is the way capital functions. So I may be one of the few people from a trading environment that's speaking out. More are going to be coming because we're getting in the age of retirement. So this is the way capital moves. On a dealing desk, you look, okay, fine, what's next? Because it's all connected. A good trader knows that. I can tell you, honestly, when they were forming the euro, they came to us, they took the whole back row in our London conference that year, and the Bundesbank was against the euro. They used to basically leak information to us because they knew all the institutions read us. And they were against it, knew it wouldn't work. I met with them and told them it wouldn't work. At that point in time, it was very clear. If you wanted a currency to compete against the dollar, what do you need? You need a single debt market. Institution, major, insurance company may have a few $100 billion. They want to park it someplace. Okay? If you don't have a national debt for Europe, there's no place to do it. Now you have to look at each country. And each country has a different credit rating. Who do you trust? Who you don't trust? This is why the Bunds are going crazy. It's capital rushing away from other places, and I can tell you what the traders expect. Germany's been benefiting with the capital inflows that way, with the DAX, etc. Why? Because it's a bet against the euro. The common thing that they will tell me, hey, if the euro fails, I got German stuff, I'll end up with Deutschmarks.
You kind of compare the debt of countries to a huge Ponzi scheme. Why?
Largely because it's astonishing, honestly. But what's evolved since World War II is they borrow year after year with no intention of paying anything back. And why do we borrow and pay interest? It used to be the theory that debt, it was less inflationary to borrow than to print. Why? Because before 1971, if I had a stack of government bonds, and I said I went to the bank and I wanted to borrow, I said, okay, fine, I want to borrow to buy a house or something. It was illegal. They could not lend on government bonds. After 71, if you went trade markets, you put your money in T-bills and use as collateral. So now government debt's just become money that pays interest. That's it. There's no distinction between the two. So honestly, it makes no sense. We should just be printing. If you can look, almost at times 70% of the national debt of Germany as well as the United States has been the cumulative interest rates. This didn't go to help build schools or children or anything else. Went to the bankers.
So why should the taxpayers pay for it?
That's my argument is honestly that we don't need this. We did a solutions conference, how to get out of this. It's going to have to be a debt to equity type swap. Kind of like, Greece is selling off assets to Russia. We just have to recognize that this system doesn't work, and it's not going to perpetually keep going. Your tax burden keeps rising and rising and rising, and it's great the politicians say, oh, the rich don't pay their fair share. Okay. Raising taxes on the rich, does it ever lower anybody else's taxes? No, it just puts more money in their pocket. That's it. I was down in Australia, and they sold the luxury tax. Sounded great. Had a slogan of, we're going to tax their Ferraris, their fur coats, and their French wines. And everybody cheered. Yeah, go get them. Well, they passed it. What was in it? All electrical products. So, look, that's the way it is. They're always going to tax more and more and more. It's the same thinking process. So even Einstein said you cannot solve a problem with the same thinking process.
Now, how do you solve the Greece problem right now?
Honestly, I would have to look at doing a whole debt to equity swap and bring this out. It's got to stop. You keep giving them more and more money and then expecting them to pay back. Greece just today now ordered all its departments within the government to send its cash back to the central bank because it's broke and it's trying to make the IMF loans. You're going to have civil war. You can't do this to people. This is crazy. This is totally crazy. The people have paid twice as much and have paid dearly, and whose mistakes are these? It's not the people, it's politicians.
You predict a major sovereignty debt big bang for later this year. What will happen, and how can we prevent it from happening?
There's no prevention because, yes, in theory, you can stand up and say, okay, this is going to happen. Let's change the system. But nobody's going to change it until they actually see it. That's human nature. So, Big Bang is largely every government's in trouble. Britain has the highest debt per capita in Europe. I mean, it's like there's no end. But that raises taxes. It's not very, there's no solution out of this.
What will the Big Bang look like?
Largely the same thing. I mean, you're seeing it in Greece. I mean, eventually they're going to be forced to default. Once that happens, I'll tell you, the traders will start looking around who's next. Then I strongly recommend reading Herbert Hoover, because that's exactly what happened. One country after the next was forced into default. And then you're talking about wiping out pension funds. You have, even in Switzerland, by law, a lot of pension funds have to have more than 80% government bonds. 80%. I mean, you're talking about wiping out people's futures here. So that's what I'm arguing. Look, we need a solution, because this is not working.
Do you see a connection between the sovereign debt crisis, the economic crisis, and the war?
Unfortunately, yes. We have all this in our computer, and we've correlated them. And you don't get war unless the economy turns down. People are not willing to fight if they're fat and happy. Take something away from them, then what? Then you get the civil unrest, you get war, you get things of this nature only when the economy turns down. If the economy's booming, nobody wants to do anything. Why? Everybody's happy. If you suddenly lose your pension and they go, oh, well, it's not me, it's that guy over there. This was the mistake that Obama made with Putin. Very openly trying to put in sanctions, etc. Stupid. Completely stupid. Because the people, he thought, the idea would be that they would rise up and overthrow Putin. No, not going to happen. Not when you and everybody knows you're the cause of it. If you're the cause of it, all he has to stand up and say, this is what they're doing to us now. So the people are going to rally behind him against the external enemy. This is how wars are created. You have to be very careful. I mean, but it's always the same. It's like I said, it's a Shakespeare's play. It's always the same result that you get, just the actors change.
So, Marty, you talk in your documentary about the club. What is the club?
The club is effectively a group of bankers, mostly money center bankers, investment bankers. They're not the typical local regional type banker. Goldman Sachs doesn't have branches that takes money from widows and orphans. It's a trading operation.
What is your problem? What's your grievance with the club?
Largely, I think that primarily that they have changed the entire role of banking. Before, it was relationship banking, where if I gave you a loan, it was between us. Your loan stayed on my books. I'd make sure you were okay, whatever. And what's transpired is that they've evolved it into transactional banking. Whereas I don't care anything about you. If I can get you to do something, then I sell it to somebody else. So they're securitizing it. So, and then they send these things around and they blow up like Iceland and many other countries. It's just transactional. It's how much money can I make on this deal, that's it. They don't care about the ramifications of it.
So why didn't you want to belong to this club who did very well for themselves?
Because largely money's, you get to a point you can't spend it. I mean, if you really, it sounds, great. All right, if you got $1 billion. It's not really going to change your lifestyle. If you bought the most expensive house in the country, like $150 million, and then you filled it with all kinds of art and stuff like that, so let's say you spend another $200 million. What are you going to do with the rest of it? It's more for monopoly. It's more for playing, investing, and gambling back and forth. It's not going to change your lifestyle.
Are we governed by a higher entity?
Oh, I don't know. That gets into religion per se, but the entire universe, everything has a cycle to it. And I mean, it's just a different way of thinking. That I think we need to recoup. I don't know why we're in the West so linear in that context. Everyone acknowledges there's a business cycle, but they kind of say, "Oh, yeah, but you can't define it." Why? You're not measuring it. You're not trying. But we want to believe in, like Santa Claus, that government can create perpetual growth, 3% every year forever, without it ever going down. That was Marx's idea. If we take all the toys away from everybody, create perfect communism, then we'll eliminate the business cycle. Well, politicians were corrupt. I mean, you can't, it's human nature. We can't eliminate it, and many people have tried. This system is just, it's going to really implode. And I have children and grandchildren. I mean, it's not for me. I'm fine. I can go hide on the beach someplace at this point. But what are we leaving behind?